Hello, everyone. Mike Meback with KTVU Fox 2 in the San Francisco Bay Area. We are dialing in on distance learning, and Pam Roggeman, Dean of the College of Education there at the University of Phoenix, is here to talk about it. Pam, thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me. Pleasure to be
Yeah,
here.
of course. So here I am sitting in my son's room working from home. And I'd say probably, Pam, just a few weeks ago, I thought, look, I have a second grader and a fifth grader. I thought for sure that we would be going back to school no matter what, social distancing guidelines. But right now, I have no idea. In fact, I think I'm leaning towards distance learning. Just on a wide perspective, K through 12, where do you think we're going to be in the fall here?
I think exactly what you said. I think that what most school districts are doing is they're allowing parents to make the choice that they feel is safest for their own child and their own family. I'm coming to you from the state of Arizona, and our governor just said you can start school earlier, but you can't go back to the brick and mortar school until August 17th. And so I think what school districts are really in the process of doing is, over spring break, they had a matter of days to pivot to online learning. And so
Yeah.
it was at varying levels of success. And so now I think school districts have had 90 days or the entire summer to get themselves prepped for it. And so I think that what we're going to see, what back to school is going to look like this fall, is a much more robust virtual learning offering to start the school year off for everybody in many states, and then to allow parents to make that choice as schools start.
Back in March, I feel like not all, but I think some teachers are just overwhelmed, right? That this wasn't what I signed up for. I think the same could be said for parents. So if there was a blueprint for distance learning, maybe it's three chapters, maybe it's longer, probably is longer. But what are one or two or three highlights that you think moving forward? And this is all different levels. I'll ask you first about teachers, what they really need to dial in on.
Yeah, it's great that you mentioned that. I think this spring, parents and teachers had a lot of patience with each other because we all knew that this was an unprecedented time. But I think that both parents and teachers are going to expect a lot more out of their education offering. So teachers really are having to learn, the pedagogy of teaching, those principles remain the same, but the delivery on that new modality is really a challenge for a lot of teachers who in the brick and mortar classroom would rely on their strengths. Maybe my strength is making strong relationships with my students in, the face-to-face modality. And now I have to figure out how to do that in the online environment. I'll tell you, one of the things that we did at University of Phoenix is we partnered with a group called Blackboard, and we offered a free online virtual teaching academy for teachers to ramp up on all of those skills. It's still going on this afternoon, today, and tomorrow. But I think what teachers are doing is they're saying, okay, I have really three areas where I kind of need to figure that out. One is tech. Both of ramping up my skills. The other is access. What is my access at home? Do I have the tools and the web capabilities of being able to reach my students? And then I think the third thing is that they are trying to figure out how do I transfer these skills into the virtual space? What do I need to learn? I think the best piece of advice that I've heard in just the reading and listening that I've done for teachers is start by learning one thing well. Whether that be a platform like Google Classroom or whatever, learn one thing, learn how to use it well, and then branch out. Don't feel like you have to become like this expert virtual teacher in one summer. And people spend their entire careers doing it. So learn one thing well, and then branch out.
So if they do that, I mean, in essence, are teachers going to have to sacrifice maybe something that you talk about the brick and mortar classroom that they would have in there, whatever it may be, when it comes to delivering, when it comes to their teaching style, that they're going to have to put to the side?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think that virtual space has come to such an evolution now that, let's say that one of your strengths is connecting with students. And that's really what you lean on. You get your students to really like trust you and whatnot before you begin to learn. I think there are just different ways that teachers are figuring out how to bring that to the classroom, whether it be, I know, my brother, who's actually a principal in the Bay Area, he started an online, just a YouTube channel, because one of the things that they did at their school was they had their mindful moment, which they started the entire elementary school with daily. And so he put that on YouTube. And so he continued to connect with his students during his mindful moment. And I think, teachers, it might might not look exactly the same, but I do think that they still can lean on the areas of their expertise. There's all different ways to connect with students. We talked about the high and the low and the no tech access that some of our students had. And, I know that some teachers in the no access situations would just, go old school and pick up the phone and call their students and just talk to them and just say, hey, I miss you. I'm checking in. How's it going? So I think teachers find a way.
I think access too is so important. I mean, here, Salesforce CEO Mark Benioff, I think he's given close to $100 million just to San Francisco Unified and Oakland Unified. I mean, how much of it is money and budgets, and that not only the students have what they need, but also the teachers to deliver what they're expected to deliver through distance learning.
Oh, you bring up a good point. And, the budget issues are a big deal. I think that we found, a lot of school districts across the United States had been to and gotten to the point where they were like one-to-one. So the students all had a device, but, we weren't using that device in the way that virtual learning really requires. But I think that you're right with access. I know a lot of school districts across the country that were telling their families, who relied on their workplace. A lot of working parents said, oh, I have my internet and we have our devices at work. And so we really don't need to have them in the home. And so they were, learning that some of their families, the only screen that they had at home were their phones. And that is just not, a robust way to continue to do that. So I know what a lot of school districts have done is they partnered with providers or, just as you mentioned, to get hotspots into the home, to get refurbished devices out to those families that they needed it. And so I think you bring up a really good point. I think what districts did this summer is they really did a good sound needs assessment, not only of the students who live in their district, but also of their staff, to say, what are our hardest hit areas and what can we do to really reach out and help those folks in our community?
What about the teacher parent relationship? I mean, pre-pandemic, I always thought that was an important relationship in the classroom, volunteering in classroom whenever parents could, homework at home, being there as children did it, especially the younger years. But when we do distance learning, is that still an important factor, the relationship specifically between the teacher and the parent?
I think it's more important than it ever has been. I just chatted with a special education teacher who's a friend of mine, and he was talking about the fact that the parent has become the guide on the side, almost the place that, for the special education teacher, we're the paraprofessional in the classroom, or that classroom aide would be, because depending on the age level or the ability level of our students, accessing, it's one thing for a kid to be able to play games on their game system or on their tablet. It's a completely other thing for that kid to maneuver a keyboard and join a Zoom classroom session. And so I think parents have become just huge partners. Like they have a much more deep and stake in the game, much more than they ever have been before. And I think that that's another thing that teachers, who are smart are going to figure out. Maybe I need to create some of these like learning tools for my teachers to say, hey, these are the most important features of the tech platform that we're going to use that you need to help your student with, and maybe have that parent be the guide on the side for a while until the teacher is comfortable with the student's access, and then tell the parents, okay, now you can walk away. Yeah. Which is a huge point, because I know you just mentioned that you have little kids, and you're lucky enough to maintain your job while school is happening. So I think for parents, it's an important thing to really say, let's be realistic about this. If my kids are going back to school virtually, do I need to bring in maybe a college kid who's doing virtual learning from home and say, oh, for a couple hours a day, will you really focus on helping my child? That's kind of an inexpensive way, or, partner with the family next door, and just to figure out what the kid coverage is going to be to make sure that you do make learning a priority when we go back to school virtually.
I think I kept thinking, if we do go back to distance learning, and it looks like we are, that school children would kind of roll into it and go, okay, we've done this. I remember doing this. I'm okay. We got this. But at the same time, what's different to me is that there's no relationship. And I guess this goes back to the relationship with the teachers and their students. But, they're not going to know their teacher. Like class day one,
exactly.
We're not sitting in our chairs, and instead we're doing this on a computer. And to me, that's a little concerning, I guess. Again, this is probably more K through 8 than high school and college. But
no, I think it's important. Yeah, I think it's important in high school as well. And again, just the folks, the teacher friends that I have talked to, the experts say that relationship building, because you're right, we had the advantage of having 3/4 of face-to-face instruction last spring, and now we're going to start with new students and with a new teacher. And so I think that it's more important than ever to spend that beginning of the school year using those relationship building methods. I know we're all concerned about the academic loss that we experienced, but we know that kids, until they feel safe with you and until they trust you, they're not going to give their all to learning. So I've heard of all different kinds of ways that teachers are doing it. They're using different kinds of tools that are appropriate for different levels of students. For the young kids, I hear teachers using an app called Seesaw, and that is kind of a video interactive tool that kids are allowed to, hey, well, maybe tomorrow we're going to study the letter C. And so I want everybody to bring something, one of their favorite toys that begins with the letter C. And we're going to start by doing a show and tell. And I'm going to let my child talk to you and show his video. And of course, all of these district video tools follow the same safety guidelines that we would have when we signed those video permissions for students at the beginning of the year. It's all protected. It's all behind the firewall. It's all safe. So it's just going to and from the teacher. But those relationship things of being able to see each other face to face, hear your voice, know the affect, learn about your child's interests, all of those things are super important. And it's also important for teachers to provide kids the opportunity to get to know their classmates. I mean, our kids are lonely. They've missed their friends. They miss meeting new people. That's a great social skill that, we continue to build in the K through 12 grades. That's one of the benefits of social learning, is that kids need to be able to maneuver all of those different kinds of personality interactions that they don't get when they're learning at home by themselves. So you need to make them feel like they're not learning by themselves.
That's so critical. That's a great point. So before we let you go, I mean, obviously the University of Phoenix, you're very used to distance learning, but it's what you do. If you had one piece of advice for teachers out there as the fall semester approaches, what would you say that would be, Pam?
I would say make sure that your voice is heard at your district level for what you need for the teachers. And I know that, the leaders of great school districts are already doing that. They're listening to their teachers. And because, the voice of the teacher is something that should always be brought to the table in any discussion about education, but it's extremely critical now because the teachers will let you know what they need in order to do their job.
There you go. All right. And just so our viewers know, you can watch this interview and other interviews tied to the coronavirus pandemic at coronavirusnow.com. The Dean of the College of Education there at the University of Phoenix, Pam Roggeman. Appreciate your time, Pam.
Thanks so much, and good luck to you next year.